everyone. This is Soul Brothers. Welcome back. My name is, I guess people used to say Pastor Nathan Sanford. I don't know if you can say that anymore with the whole fivefold emphasis. So I don't, so whatever, fill in the blank. Maybe I'm none of those. Maybe I'm just Saint Nathan Sanford, and that's good enough for me. And this is...
This is Keith Hines. I am not saintly.
You're saintly looking, I'll tell you that.
Might be more portly. I don't know. It's one of the two. But
blessed is the man who whose portliness blesses
that's it.
his
Eats
neighbor.
a lot at the table. That's
Yes.
So,
So welcome to Soul Brothers. We're here to basically feed the soul. We're about the mind, the body, and the soul. We want to actually encourage people, impact people, fill people, build people up. I think especially now when people really, really need to be built up and encouraged and unleashed and put forth. And that's what we want to do. So that's going to be the whole goal here.
I love it. So jumping into today's topic, we're just going to jump right in. I had the opportunity. Technically, let me full disclosure. This is not the topic we originally had planned for this third episode, but I had the opportunity to go with my wife and two of my 5 kids to Israel a couple weeks ago, and I'm sitting on the Mount of Beatitudes, seeing where all of this went down, and a few things kind of struck me differently than they had before. So we've talked in the setup in the first episode about how you and I share a number of things. Among those is at least some measure of background in psychology, different areas of it, but still a background there. So a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to write a book called The Kitty Hawk Principle, and it really talks about establishing an organization, a best-in-class organization. And through that, it addresses different aspects of what a best-in-class organization looks like, and it ties to things like mission, vision, values, culture, and those sorts of things. And for the first time, I'm sitting on the Mount of Beatitudes, and my mind and my heart are trying to take in just really where I'm at. And it was interesting because this whole twist came up in my mind or my spirit about looking at the Sermon on the Mount as in a different way. And it was looking at it more of a, among perhaps the many things that Christ was doing at that moment, he was, in my opinion at the time, was establishing or setting forth certain values and defining the culture of who's living for the Lord, right? Who has been changed by the Lord, who's saved and living in the kingdom of heaven. So with that, what I wanted to do is just talk about the Beatitudes in that perspective, and to kind of help set the groundwork for this. When you look at an organization, there are a few things that at the very foundation of any truly successful organization, they have to be right. And one of those is mission. And mission is essentially what an organization does, right? And it's very much a representation of employee actions when you talk about the mission, and it's very, now oriented. Vision is the next piece of this in the foundation, and it talks about what an organization desires to become. So it's very aspirational, and it's very future oriented. And then among those two things, or in addition to those two things, you have values. And all of those things, values really, if mission is what an organization does, if vision is what an organization desires to become, then values are an organization's identity when you look at IO psychology. So they really encapsulate the customs, the attitudes, the collective beliefs and priorities of the people that work for an organization or make up an organization or a collective group. They define the features and the principles by which an organization or the people within an organization operate. And they're really kind of define the set of rules which govern how people behave. It's not just processes and procedures. It really is more of an attitude and a focus as far as how those things are carried out. And that's really what struck me, because all of those together create culture. And although culture can sometimes be defined as simply the collective beliefs and values of an organization or a group of people, it really is honed in on the values itself. And that's what struck me. If we look at, I think right now, when we talk about church, the royal we, right? When everyone out and about kind of references the church, right? You're talking about not just the body. A lot of times people consider the building, but they look at it in perspective of whether they realize it or not as an organization. Mm-hmm. And in some respects it is, because it's a collective group of people working toward a mission, a vision. And if you looked at the mission, I'm going to go a little bit deeper here. If you looked at the mission as the Great Commission mm-hmm. for the church, and you looked at the vision, which is really the greatest commandment, then what are the values to help you get there? And the way it struck me sitting on this mountainside was that is, in essence, a part of what Jesus was doing. He was outlining the values that really should define, should define really how we feel, how we think, our behaviors, our emotions, all of that, if we're truly changed by him and living for him. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
So I wanted to break those down, because my thought was we can point to these. People can go to Matthew 5, and then we can point to the Beatitudes, and we can talk about it being just a wonderful sermon. But do we really understand it? Do we understand what it really is telling us? Do we understand what that really looks like, and how that impacts us? And talking about soul brothers and those aspects of the soul, our emotions, our thoughts, our behaviors, mm-hmm. so that we are truly reflecting those Beatitudes. Yeah. So that's what I'd like to talk about today.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So
let's do it.
So as we jump in, I have a super important question for you.
Yes.
Is it blessed or blessed?
Well, it doesn't matter. It's Markarion or Markarioi. So,
well, there you go.
I mean, it's an English, obviously, translation of a very Greek word. So, like that, we wouldn't even use that word typically if it weren't for Makarion is the root word. Makarioi, of course, is the plural. It's an adjective, like a plural adjective. So you can say blessed or blessed.
Okay. Well, we're in the South.
That's true. So blessed. I don't know. I did figure out a couple things of how people use blessed in the South for sure. I was like, wow. Like if I discovered this, and one of the first things I learned. So I came to the church in the South, right? And I realized you can absolutely rip into somebody. I mean, you can tear them limb from limb verbally. You can slander them like nobody's business. And at the end of that, all you have to say is, but bless her heart.
That's it.
And then it's okay.
Technically, if you say bless your heart, that's all you have to say in the South. That is the rip apart.
Yeah, it is. You don't even have to say anything.
You don't have to say anything else. Now, the other thing is that I figured out is Alice and I went to a church where I figured out real quick when people they get to sing the special song of the week. Right? You got somebody come up and they got a song. If they're ever off key,
right.
Bless them, Lord.
Oh, yeah. I've noticed that, too. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, if they're absolutely horrible, even if you hear, like, the worst sermon ever, it's like, well, bless them. It doesn't matter if it's blasphemy or... so it's all good. Just bless them.
That's it.
And walk away.
Which is a little bit different. That you're hoping for the bless with the bless.
Right,
or hoping for the best. And bless your heart means, hey,
Yeah, I mean, I realized this is great. I can just rip in anybody to say, but bless their heart and everything's fine.
And that's it. So
yep.
which gets to and the reason I ask this is because you and I have talked about this and joked about this at different times, that when it comes to church culture, there is a language.
Oh, yeah.
There are specific things that are said. And I've always referenced it as Christianese.
Right.
And people easily go to the same words over and over and over again. It's almost like it's just, it's like like a knee-jerk reaction. They automatically go to whatever word. But blessed or blessed is one of those in my mind.
Yeah. Definitely. How are you? I'm blessed. Not really sure what that means exactly. But okay.
Blessed is one of those words where it seems to me, or one of the pronunciations where it seems more like you have to say blessed if you pronounce God as God.
Oh,
in the sermon,
yes.
like if you're really into it.
Right? I kind of enjoyed those. Praise the Lord.
That's it.
Praise Jesus. I could so go all I should be more Pentecostal than I am. But I wasn't raised like that, so I don't know. I don't know if that's okay to do that. Is that like cultural appropriation?
I did see fire emojis pop up.
Oh, there it is, man. I'm ready to do it. Let's go. Blessed. Okay.
So the Greek word itself, what does it actually mean in the direct English translation? Is blessed the right word?
No.
Okay.
But there's no word. It's the closest word that you can get, I think. Okay. So it kind of has two meanings. Like it has everything to do with happiness, but it's happiness and joy wrapped in contentment. So you could say like, oh, the happiness of, or oh, the contentment of. But it's both ideas kind of put together. So it's like your happiness and your joy is born from your contentment. So it's like you're completely content and completely filled, like you have no, like, and it's actually like your happiness and your joy is actually contained inside your contentment and nothing can touch it. So it's like this joy and this contentment is contained inside of an impenetrable force field so that no external circumstance can touch it. That's what it means to be blessed.
Wow. So really, if we look at contentment, it's being totally fulfilled.
Yes.
Not even needing to desire anything outside of it, right?
Yes, and it's more than that. Even as far as it is joy, it is happiness at its most extreme that cannot be touched or influenced by any external factor. So that's what it is to be blessed. So if you're really blessed, like your whole house could blow up, and it truly doesn't affect you. Like that is what it means to be blessed. Like you're actually immune to it because all of your joy is wrapped up in contentment.
That you can't be robbed of.
Correct. Like nobody could steal it from you. No one. It's like what Peter and John had when they're in the stocks, and they're getting, they've been beaten with rods and they're in the inner prison, which is like dark and disgusting. Like this is where you send the nasty people, and they start worshiping.
Wow.
That's blessed. Like that's what they are. They're Makarioi is what you see most time because it's plural.
Okay. So when we talk about truly the joy of the Lord, that's what we're talking about here. Is that a different word?
It's a different word, but that's basically what we're talking about.
Okay.
We're talking about, because what he's basically doing, like when we're talking about the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, when he's talking about describing the reality of the kingdom, what he's really doing is describing God. Okay. That's what he's doing. He's like, this is God. So the joy of the Lord, in the sense that like this is what it is to be in him. To be blessed is to be in him, like in that reality, like you're actually living in the God reality. It is to say, this is what it is prior to the fall. Like this is what it is to have sin removed. Because what Jesus does is he starts it off literally by saying, basically what he's going to do is paint a picture of impossible standards on purpose.
Yeah. Because
he just, had issues with the Pharisees, like right before this, which is usual. And so then he goes right into saying like, blessed are the poor, or literally poor in spirit. In other words, blessed are the ones who know they got nothing.
Okay. So, all right, so truly it means poor in spirit, right? Like I've heard different people define what that means in different ways. What does that actually mean? Describe what poor in spirit looks like.
So you can't understand you're poor in spirit without a revelation of Jesus Christ. It's impossible. So in other words, unless you see God, unless there is an actual revelation of who Jesus is, you can't reach poor in spirit, because it is only the juxtaposition of your spirit next to his that actually gives you a revelation of how empty and lost you really are. And what it does is destroy religion. So Jesus literally starts off by taking a hammer to religion. So people have taken this and been like, here's the standards by which we should strive for. It's completely the opposite.
Yeah.
He actually sets it up by saying, you can't do any of this. Like, blessed are the poor in spirit, meaning you don't have it within your spirit to do anything. Like, you realize, I am poor in spirit. I am desperately in need of a savior.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So earlier we were talking, before we jumped into this, we were offline and we were talking a little bit about the recent trip to Israel. And I told you that for me, perhaps the most impactful moment was sitting in the Garden of Gethsemane, surrounded by these beautiful olive trees. And then I look up and I see the Mercy Gate.
Yeah.
And right over it, I see currently the Dome of the Rock where the temple would have been, and what my revelation at the moment was, in this spot, Jesus is praying, right? Not my will, but your will, right? He's sweating blood, but when he looks up, if he sees that same sight, which he would have, then he's seeing the past, present, and future, knowing what he's stepping into. And at that moment, for me, it hit me hard, because I realized that, and like I told you, I don't see how anybody who could remotely believe in a works-based salvation message,
right,
if they were in that moment, I don't see how that could even be possible to hold on to that belief. Is that being poor in spirit? Was that when you realize it's
that's what it is? I mean, but see, I think the problem we have sometimes is where religion gets in there, is we understand that it's not a works-based salvation. That's salvation by faith. But then religion teaches people that it's sanctification by works. So it's like it gets taught like you're saved by faith, and like, you know that you can't do that, but all of a sudden now you can do this. Yeah. So it's like, well, I can't save myself, so I need to rely on Jesus for that, but somehow I can be holy on my own. Oh. You know what I'm saying?
Or like, I need to fast more, because my fasting will bring me closer to the Lord.
Exactly. Or somehow makes you more holy. Yeah. Or somehow does anything to you that would somehow make you more Christ-like.
Gotcha.
Like, all of our fasting, all of our prayer, all of our everything is simply an expression of what Jesus has already done out of love for him. And if it isn't done in that way, you're not poor in spirit, because you're thinking you can do this.
So a poor in spirit is a humility heart posture.
Yes. And it's not, it's not like a self-hatred. It's not like a this gendering of self-hatred or something. It's like I have seen the risen Lord at any level. And I realize, like Isaiah, I'm a man of unclean lips, and other people, who are unclean, essentially, because he's like, oh my gosh, like, this is like what actual holiness is. Yeah. And I realize I am poor in spirit. Like, I've got nothing to bring to the table. Nothing. And so therefore, then that's why he starts it off with that, because then he's going to go into all the rest of this stuff that's born from the first thing, which is, I can't bring anything. And then what he's saying is, once you get this, all this other stuff is going to come from me directly through you.
Wow. So the poor in spirit, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Mm-hmm. So the second half of that statement, that kind of leads right into what you just said. That is the foundation of everything, and everything thereafter. Absolutely. Now let me define what the kingdom of heaven really looks like.
That's exactly right. Okay. He's like, this is like the entry point. Like, the entry point into the covenant is, I got nothing. Yeah. That's the entry point. I mean, if we look at every other religion in the planet, and, Christianity is not a religion. Christianity isn't, we're not Christians. I don't know how to put this. Like, we're not part of a religion, and we're not Christians. We are in love. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so I hate even saying like Christianity is different than other religions, because it's not a religion. It's I know people say it's not a religion, it's a relationship, but I think people have used that, kind of almost overused that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, we're not following a religion at all. We're in love with a person who has revealed himself to us through his grace. And we are so incredibly wowed by that. So I guess what I'm saying is like, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The first entry point is that covenant point of like, I got nothing. I give you everything.
Yeah.
You are King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I die. That is step one is I die. And step two is he says, here's the entire kingdom of heaven.
Holy smokes.
Which is
when
amazing.
you realize you have nothing to bring him.
No.
Yeah. Then you become the drummer boy. Parumpa-pum-pum. Right.
I mean, I just was always saying the drummer boy when I was a kid. I was always a pum whatever kid. I was that kid. And I love that song. I would cry when I was a kid singing that song, not even really understanding, what I was doing. But it's really that. Like, we don't. And it's so weird because we bring nothing.
Yeah.
And then he goes, okay, now that you know you're bringing nothing, I'm going to give you everything. And I'm going to actually reveal to you what you look like in my eyes, which is everything.
See, that second part of that statement to me is the thing that should blow us all away.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we spend so much time looking not just at other people. Go look in the mirror. We look at ourselves in a certain way. But one thing I've asked the Lord a lot recently, it really started, I think, when I began hanging out with you.
Uh-oh.
Oddly enough.
I've infected you.
You have. Oh, man, I'm telling you, the weeping prophet strikes again. So I started asking the Lord a lot, show me how you see that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I was on a subway last week, and people would come in, and I would look at them for a moment, and then I would stop and say, and I wasn't passing judgment, I just noticed them coming in. And I would wonder, okay, what's going on in their life? Do they look happy or do they not look happy? And I've started asking a lot, Lord, tell me what to pray for this person. Like, I don't have a clue. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to just pray, Lord, save them. Because it's his will that they accept him.
Absolutely.
So, and I guess I could pray that just for his, pray for your will, Lord. But what is it specifically? And by the way, how do you see them and how do you want me to see them?
Yes.
And, like I said, I got that from you because you've told stories about how, the Lord has blessed you in a certain way to be able to do that. And it really...
I think I told you about that with crazy encounter, right? I got taken to this place and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not necessarily asking for that.
No, we don't need to go there. But I'm just saying, like, I kind of always had a heart like that. But then like after that, I felt like almost like not obligation, like responsibility to bring that in whatever way I could, that people could actually see others how he sees them, because it will change everything.
Could you imagine if everybody, there's no, and this might be a future podcast, but there is no identity crisis the minute you see yourself the way the Lord sees you.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, you wipe out everything. I mean, you really do. When you know who you are in Christ Jesus, because of him and through him, you do and walk in all these things naturally.
Yeah.
You're not performing. You're not striving. Not to say there aren't moments and times in your life, of course, that you might struggle or have to make tough decisions. We call that integrity. That's fine. But when that's the rule, I question whether or not you even know him.
Yeah.
Because the rule is it comes easily. The rule is I want to do this.
Yeah.
That's the rule. Now, the exception is, yes, there'll be some struggles, there'll be some times. But see, we flip that around. And we said you should always struggle, and that's called integrity. Like, no, integrity is when you want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
That's integrity. Not when you don't want to do the right thing and you make yourself do it out of some sort of self-will, which I understand sometimes we have to do that.
Yeah.
But that's not, from identity flows real integrity. And therefore all your encompassing desires is to do everything he says, every way he does it. And it flows with fire from you.
Well, that goes exactly back to what we talked about before of it starts with the heart.
Yes.
Then the thoughts and then the behaviors are just a natural reflection of who you now are inside, because he changed you. But I realize we're just now on the first Beatitude, but to me, just the way you set that up, Man, that just makes sense. That truly is kind of the cornerstone beatitude.
Mm-hmm. It's the first core value. Like he's laying down, this is the entry point.
Yeah.
Like you need to know, you cannot perform these. You cannot do this. That's what he's saying. Like, blessed are the poor in spirit, meaning theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So all this stuff I'm going to say, you can't do it.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So
it's absolutely awesome. So, all right. So let's jump to the next one. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Break that down for us.
Okay, I'm curious about what your thoughts are on it before I get into the word mourn, because that's the real key word here.
Yeah. I think previously I would have seen that, and because I don't know the Greek word it comes from, my first reaction would now to be go look that up.
Sure.
But just reading it in the modern English, mourn to me indicates a sorrow, a point of being sorrowful. My question immediately would be, sorrowful about what?
Right.
Is it about my current state? Is it about the state of man? Is it about, what is it? And I just knowing the Lord, I cannot believe he's suggesting that we are to walk around miserable all the time.
No.
I don't think that's what that means.
No, definitely not.
And
it's not blessed are the depressed.
yeah, they're perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not that.
But I do think people can read it that way.
Oh, I'm sure they
and
probably
if they
could.
do, that's dangerous.
Oh, it's super dangerous. Yeah, this isn't blessed are the depressed. Like, this is a very particular Greek word. If I remember correctly, it is the only time this word is used, I think. Now, that might not be right. So someone's going to say, oh, that's not true. But it is a rare-ish word. And so when he says mourn, he's talking about, this is a specific word used to be like mourning for unrighteousness, like mourning for sin, mourning for where things are versus where they should be. So it's like, blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are seeing how things should be in the kingdom and seeing the sinful state of both themselves and other people and mourning or groaning over the disparity. That's what that is. So it's like they are mourning over this unrighteous state of everything and saying like, oh God, mourning. And the cool thing about that is they shall be comforted, which isn't like Jesus is like putting his arm out. I know it sucks, like, but don't worry. Like, you know, I'm coming back. Kurt Cameron's going to be happy. Like that. That's not what he's saying. Like, he doesn't mean they'll be comforted in that sense. Like, even that word doesn't really reflect that at all. Yeah. He's like, for those who are groaning, who are mourning over the fact that they see their own sin and their own brokenness before the Lord, and they also are seeing in the world, they'll be comforted, meaning there's change. Okay. Meaning, like, they'll be comforted in the sense that they won't have to mourn because they will be transformed and equipped to make a difference.
So it really is a natural flow from the first to the second because of that. Right. Because when you come in and you realize that it's not you, you have nothing. It is Jesus. It's because of Jesus. It's for Jesus. He's the one that changes you. He's the only one who can do this. Yes. And then after you realize that, it's a natural extension to then go, oh man, my own state and the state of others, because I know that it's the Lord and not me. Mm-hmm. And what he's doing is reassuring, if I understand what you're saying, he's reassuring you that now you're on the right track.
Yes. There's an interesting explosion that happens. The Lord showed me this explosion one time. I was like, Lord, how can we... because I think Tozer, I was reading a Tozer quote. I got this Tozer kick when I still love Tozer. I think he's amazing.
The guy blows me away.
Oh, he absolutely. Have you ever read The Knowledge of the Holy?
Yes.
That's so good.
And that's what did it for me.
Yeah, The Pursuit of God is another one. And in one of them, I can't remember honestly which one it is, but he says, how does he put it? He says, only to the depth of your understanding of your depravity can you understand the love of God. Essentially is what he's saying. Yeah. And I read that and I was like, well, Lord, how does that happen? Because like, if I really get in touch with my depravity, I don't think I ain't getting out of that hole. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I'm getting out of that. Like, if I actually see like my sin and the way it's affected people, like, I don't know that I'm coming out of that. Like, I think I'm going to be in an institution. Like, I don't know what's going on. And the Lord showed me it was like this explosion where right at the moment that your depravity is revealed, the Father's love meets you. It's like this poof, at the same time. It's like, and that's what I see here. It's like right at that morning level when it's like despair and this is impossible and my sin is crushing. That is the absolute moment where you are met with the Father's love. And it's like this explosion happens in your spirit where it's like it is overwhelmed by the Father's love. And you realize how insignificant your sin is next to the love of God.
So let's talk a little bit about, given what you just said, about that message in some pulpits today. I'm not going to claim all of them, certainly, but there are some. I mean, I've heard people where it truly is it's almost like a whack-a-mole game, right? Where I'm going to beat you down over your depravity, right? And over your...
Give me an example, because
your sinful nature. Well, you're just a sinner. And,
okay, gotcha.
Right? You'll never be worthy.
Okay.
Period. No matter what. And you need to always, you're going to sin in word, deed, and thought every day. Like all of that.
You're going to sin
stuff.
Constantly. Sin. Yeah. Yes.
And if that type of thing is being taught and people hold on to that in any measure, then I think the real risk is not just kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy of that's the way you're going to act because that's your identity now. But I think that it's you're going to completely miss the love.
Yes.
And man, that's a travesty.
It is, because in that environment, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and in those environments, like I've seen it, it's like depression, struggle become like almost like what we want to do. They become
like a badge of honor.
Yeah, like they become almost like a goal or like kind of like a merit.
Yeah.
Somehow it's like a merit badge that you get into places like that, and you better be struggling all the time, and you better have an issue all the time. And like the number one thing when you walk in and talk to someone is like, if you want to even have a conversation in a church environments like that, is basically like, well, what's God dealing with you now? Well, gosh, God has his finger on this other issue and that issue, and you better be struggling and depressed. Like that is like where you're supposed to be, and then we call that the wilderness, or whatever you want to label it. And then, especially if it goes on for a long time, and then that's all people are doing is like focusing constantly on their own brokenness, and as somehow this is a good thing, and this is how you have character or something like that. And it's a tragedy. It really is. I understand people's hearts. Like they're trying to get people to understand they're sinners so they can repent and all that. Like I get that, but you're completely missing the Father's heart and the Father's love.
And if you do that, how can you ever truly have joy?
Right.
How can you have it reflect? And honestly, how would anybody look at you if you were like, if you walked around that way? Why would you look at somebody and go, I got to have that?
Right. Who'd want to be inspired by that? Well, and you couldn't be blessed.
Yeah.
Because he said you couldn't be, because blessed is joy.
Yeah.
I mean, the happiness of. That's one way you can translate that. Like, so this is like really, really, really happy people.
Wow. Shiny, happy people.
I mean, it really is. I mean, that's what blessed means. It does. If it means anything, it means that in contentment. But again, contentment and happiness in the same bubble and interrelated.
So comforted, to go back to that second piece of it, it's not just consolation, as you put it. It's more of you're going to attain the perfection of what it is that you're mourning for.
That is correct. You will see this change.
Yeah.
That's what, so comfort is, isn't consolation like, that really sucked. I'm sorry Dad died. I mean, that's not what it is. Yeah. It's like,
you mean, hold on, Jesus isn't putting you in a safe space.
I hope not. Yeah.
Giving you it's okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Journal about it.
Yes, every feeling is okay here. No.
Even if it's wrong.
So. Right. And here's the naughty words that we cannot say because someone might have hurt feelings. No, he's not doing that. He's literally saying the kind of comfort he means, and this word means this, like the achievement, the opposite of what whatever you're mourning for will be fixed.
Okay.
I mean, that's what he's saying. Like whatever you're mourning for will be fixed because your mourning is a result of a revelation of the living God.
Man. All right, so we're 2 into it, and we're right at about a half an hour for this episode. Let's do this. Let's go into one more.
Right on.
And then we will we'll break and we'll follow up in our next episode. How's that?
Sounds good.
All right. because to full disclosure again for everybody, I think Nathan and I are very transparent people. So we've talked about how long these should run, and we have no clue because Nathan and I will start talking, and it'll be 3 hours later, and then we'll realize, hold on a minute, nobody's listening to this for 3 hours. So,
but we're having a good time, so I don't know.
Yeah, we're really looking, going, hey, could we go another 3?
Yeah.
So, that's how it is. But hey, listen, we'd love feedback from you all as we move forward. Tell us what's best for you. What do you enjoy? Is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour? And at the same time, tell us any topics, any questions you want to talk about too, because we'd love to tackle those. So, all right. So, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And man, this one drives me crazy.
Okay.
And it drives me crazy because of the way I've heard people define meek.
Okay.
Meek as in, like, you have to be the complete wimp.
Wow.
You have to be you have to be the pushover. You have to be just meek as weak.
Wow.
That's kind of the way I've always heard that defined. But my understanding is the exact opposite.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. So the word translated meek or gentle or sometimes humble, they can be translated any one of those words because it is a very hard word to. There is no one English word. Like, there really isn't. There's no one English word that could sum up this word. It's impossible. Like, I don't know how you would do it. Like when you hear the word in Greek, when you studied it a lot and you're reading it in a passage, it pops out because it's so packed. And I even look at it and go, I don't know how I'd translate that. Like, I don't know. Gentle, meek, humble, powerful. I mean, you could translate a lot of different ways, but what it basically means is this. Like, you cannot be meek unless you know how awesome you are. That's the first thing. So you can't be meek. Step number 1 is you have to know how incredibly awesome you are. Step number 2, you have to be filled with a massive amount of power. Like, you have to be super powerful and super understanding of who you are in Christ Jesus. And then the second step is it's now under control. So that's basically what it is. If you want to sum it up, it would be like power under control. So this would be like Jesus on the cross when he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." When he could have just like
destroyed everything.
Yeah. Or the disciples who are being like kind of arrogant, crazy people, and they're walking towards I forget what town it was, but they're walking towards the town. They're like, "Do you want us to call down fire?" And blah blah blah. And he's like,
"Yeah,
dude, like, don't learn nothing?" Like, but they're realizing who they are and they're realizing the power they carry. Yeah. And Jesus goes, now you're going to know what it is to be meek, because until you know who you are and you know the power you carry, you cannot walk in meekness. Because if you don't know those first two things and you act in the same way, it's self-deprecation. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't work. Like, you can't be humble unless you know how awesome you are. It's impossible. So you have
false humility, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
It's self-deprecation. Like, you can't pull back. In other words, this word means massive power under control or power surrendered. So you can't do that unless you know you have power. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you can't even be gentle, meek, or however you want to translate this word. You can't do that unless you know who you are in Christ Jesus. You know the power and glory given to you, and you choose to surrender that before the living God, and it's under control, so that no one out there can control you or somehow, get you to act in a certain way, that you would react because they're taunting you or whatever. So that's why he says, the second verse, they shall inherit the earth. That's geis. That's the literal land. You could translate that, inherit the land. Because he's basically saying, like, you guys think might makes right, but I'm telling you that all this power needs to be under control.
Yeah.
And when you surrender that to me, you will literally inherit the land. I mean, that's literally what that word means, like physical land. So,
all right. So prior to you, the only person I've heard really define this in a way that made sense to me and that it agrees with this or aligns with this was Corey Russell.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I'm going to screw this up, but essentially he said something to the effect of, it's having all the muscle and refusing to flex.
Yeah. So that's pretty good way to think of it. Yeah. It's like, if this is a weird example. So if you, but something I think of, if you know me, if you know what I look like, I'm about 6'3", I'm about 235. I'm nowhere near as strong as I used to be, but I'm still pretty strong for an old man. So at 47, I still, I'd probably still bench 350 if I threw that on there. It would be a big deal. So if you get like for instance, my 5-year-old, right, is tiny. Well, he's a normal sized 5-year-old.
Yeah.
But he could come up and get mad at me, and let's say he starts yelling at me and smacking me in the knee, like, I mean, I could drop kick him outside the door. I mean, how awful would that be? Like, it's like, no, I know I'm way more powerful than him. And so I'm not going to allow this behavior to draw my power out. I'm going to keep that under control. I'm going to surrender it to the Lord. Now, of course, in his case, he needs to be disciplined. But, imagine that's like an adult, where you're like, I'm not going to allow this person to draw me into this. Like, that's meekness. But you can't be meek until you know that you have that power and that you're that holy and good and you're a child of the living God. Like, you cannot be meek, because otherwise your behaviors will just reflect a poor self-image.
So it's practicing constraint when you know there's something to constrain.
That's exactly right. Because you can't practice constraint if you don't have anything to constrain, right? If you're like, I'm a piece of crap, I'm a sinner saved by grace, like I'm sinning all the time, like, well, awesome, then you just suck. So you can never be humble, because you can't. What do you constrain? Your idiocy? Like, that doesn't work.
Some might argue people need to constrain that,
well,
so I don't know.
Probably do. But you get my point. Like, you can't do this. You can't be this unless you have a revelation of the Father's love that reveals identity, that instills power and glory in your spirit. Then you go, wow, I have this, and I will submit it to the authority of the living God.
But it really underscores the point that we've talked about a number of times now, how important it is to know truly who you are in the Lord. Not only who he is, not only what he's done for you, but who he has made you truly to be.
Yes.
So, because if you don't understand that, to your point, you can't be meek, but how much more does it hold you back from everything else?
Yes, that's absolutely right. If you don't know, again, you can perform all of it. And see, that's the thing. You can do the performance, but it will be empty. It will be vapid.
Yeah.
There's no integrity there. Like, it's such a weird, like, again, we kind of go back to the Pharisees, like, they did everything.
Yeah.
I mean, they were the most holy people around, in the sense of, like, they did all the right stuff and didn't do the bad stuff. I mean, they really did. And now I know Jesus is like, well, they aren't really doing it. Well, what he's saying is their hearts aren't there. So they're hypocrites, right? They're putting a mask on. Even they're performing these things. And that word that we get for hypocrite is literally where we get the word for, like, an actor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it was literally putting a mask on and acting, because it's like you don't actually have it at a heart level. So, and that's what the most important thing was to Jesus, was that they would know from a heart level and love from a heart level. Like, that's what it is to be humble and meek.
So what land are you inheriting? Like, break that down for me.
That is a good question. So obviously I've studied this a lot, and it's like, they shall inherit the earth. The word is gase. And gase, it usually means land. And it usually means, oftentimes it's reference to, like, the promised land.
Okay.
Like that kind of land. So I would think that he's saying inheritor of the promises.
Okay.
I think that's what he's saying. He doesn't give context in the Beatitudes, really. So it's kind of like, okay. But I think, given that he uses the word gase, he doesn't use the word cosmos, for instance. He could use the word cosmos, which would have been like the universe or like the world or something. Mm-hmm. But he didn't. He used the word gase. So it's like inherit the land. Okay. So and again, in the Septuagint, which is a Greek translation of the Old Testament, that is promised land, the gase, So I think he's talking about the promises of God.
Okay.
So for the Israelites, maybe the actual promised land, and, the promises of God in that sense.
Okay. Well, so far we've worked through 3. I think that puts us at the end of this episode. I don't know if it impacted anybody else as much as it did me, just listening to you break that down. But just understanding this, in summary, you've got to understand that it's Jesus, who he is and who you're not, followed by now understand, because of who he is and what he's done for you, your state, the state of the world around you, because your heart is now turned to Jesus. And then thirdly, once you realize those, now you start to realize who he has made you to be. You're no longer who you once were. Yeah. That poor, depraved soul, you are saved. You're filled with power. You are a new creation with more.
You have no old nature. You have no sin nature.
And now, and because of that, and because you have so much at your, I guess, power and authority,
yes,
from the covenant promise,
that's right,
authority in His name,
yes,
being able to exercise that and walk in that through constraint, just knowing that brings you joy through contentment beyond measure. Correct?
And that's and if you see, he's building almost like a structure here, because he starts with the foundation, kingdom, heaven, poor in spirit. You got nothing. You come with nothing, absolutely nothing. And then he gives you everything. And when he opens your eyes, all of a sudden you're like, you start mourning, because you realize like the actual depravity of you and the depravity of everything around you. And then right after that, he's like, then you get filled with power to change, because you'll be comforted, right? So he's giving you the power to do that change. And he's like, but you need to be meek.
Yeah.
That needs to be under control, right? So he's like, okay, now that you have the power, we're going to bring that under control, right? You need to submit that, and then you're going to inherit the earth. You see what I mean? So he actually builds like almost like a building from this, and he builds up to this like inherit the earth.
This is awesome. So the last thing I'm going to say, when you broke that down, my little child in me, right, went straight back to the 80s, and I completely saw a replay of He-Man.
Oh yeah,
you got the power, right?
I heard that was the first time I ever heard the audible voice of the Lord.
Was it really?
Did I tell you this? Like 1984. I was 8 years old. I came home at 4:00 in the afternoon. He-Man comes on. I mean, it was religiously. I watched. I mean, love. Who didn't love He-Man?
Well, they give morals at the end of every.
Oh my
episode,
gosh, that formed my whole moral structure. So, and I'm watching He-Man. It was literally at the part where it was in the intro to it, where he raises, I have the power, right? And he does that, and I hear the audible voice of the Lord, and I hear my name called out loud in the room. I hear Nathan. And I'm like, whoa, like kind of looking around, like, am I hearing this? I'm 8 years old, so I didn't really know what to think. Yeah. After that, I hear, you are called to be a pastor. and I hear, shepherd my people. And then I freak out. I start crying, screaming. My dad's upstairs. He comes running down the stairs. I'll never forget this. He runs down. I say, son, I'm hysterical, and he picks me up and puts me on his lap. And he's like, son, what's going on? I was like, Dad, I heard a voice. He's like, really? He's like, what did that voice say? He's like, I'm called to be a pastor. And he goes, and he's like, why are you crying? I was like, because your life sucks.
I do remember you saying that part. Yeah. That's the funniest thing. Well, my life was very much influenced by 80s cartoons.
Okay.
So, there will be a reference on occasion.
That's
so
awesome.
We're all good to go. So, hey, thanks everybody for listening to this episode. Please join us in the next one as we follow up with the Beatitudes and break those down, really understand what they mean, really understand how they apply to us. And in the meantime, you dig into the Word. You pray about what you're hearing. You determine what it is the Lord is telling you. And if you have any feedback, if you have any questions, if you have any topics you want us to talk about, then please let us know. We'll let you know how to do that through Facebook and other ways, and as we post this out there. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.